My name is Sam. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager here at Fairygodboss. And Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. Our mission is to improve the workplace by increasing transparency. We offer a ton of great free resources like company reviews, job listings, articles, virtual recruiting events, and so much more to help you succeed throughout your career. Before we get started, we will be taking questions at the end of today's webinar. You can leave them in the Q&A. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to leave questions as yourself or anonymously. And like I said, we'll get to as many as possible at the end today. We're also recording today's webinar and we will be sending it out in a follow-up email by the end of the day. So if you miss anything or you have to leave early or you want to rewatch this back, you will have the ability to do so. Here with me today is Rachel Beohm. Rachel has worked in the communications field for over 10 years, and she trains executives, professionals, and speakers to present themselves powerfully through the use of nonverbal communication skills so they can achieve their goals. She first discovered the power of nonverbal communication while studying for her graduate degree at Portland State University, when she observed fellow teaching assistants transform before her eyes with a few simple techniques. Rachel has become known for her knowledge, insightfulness, and remarkable ability to share her understanding in a way that others can immediately put to use. And we're going to do that here today. So thank you so much for being here today, Rachel. Over to you.
Thank you, Sam. It is a pleasure to be here. My name is Rachel, and I am excited to spend the next hour with all you wonderful people. I hope your 2021 is off to a great start. You can put in the chat whether it is or it is not. We finally made it through 2020. My 2021 is off to a crappy start, frankly, due to some bad news that I received recently from some dear friends of mine. But if there's one thing that last year really drove home to me is that the only thing I can control, I can't control my friend's health. I can't control what's going on out there in the world. I can't control the weather, but the one thing I can control is who I am, how I show up in the world, how I present myself, how I act and react. And that's the same for you as well. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today is who are you? How do you come across? How do you want to come across? And today I'm going to give you some skills that will help you present yourself in a way that is congruent to how you want to be in the world and also how you want to show up. For some reason, I am not getting my slides here. So let's see if I can fix that. There we go. Okay. Congruent with the leader that you actually are, as well as the leader that you want to be, the vision of yourself as a leader. And working with women in leadership, I have a tendency to see two ends of the spectrum when it comes to the ditches that women fall into. And I'm sure none of you on the call actually fall into either of these two ditches. But on the one side, I have what I call the hiders. And these are women who are promoted to leadership positions because they're really good at what they do. They're smart, they're hardworking, people respect them, but they don't feel like a leader. They don't own that position, that leadership skill. And they don't feel like they belong there. And so they hide, they run away from it and never really step in fully to the leadership that they've been granted. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have the people that I call the eruptors. These are women who have the confidence, they have the skills, they understand business and strategy, they're really good at that. And yet often what it is they have had to fight. They have had to fight for every inch of their career to get to where they are. And that ends up becoming a mindset, so that they view everything as a fight. And if you've known women like this, or perhaps have channeled this at some point in your life, you know that you can go from 0 to 60 on the rage scale in 0 seconds flat almost. If you're coming from that mindset of, I have to fight for everything, everyone's out to get me, I have to just wrestle around for every single thing that I have here. And of course, it's a continuum, and neither of us are one or the other. Often we bounce back and forth between the two, but most of the time you're going to lean towards one end of the spectrum or another, especially in times of stress. And this is really what we're talking about when it comes to leadership, because that is where leadership is formed and that is where it is forged. It's in times of crisis, in times of uncertainty. It's when people are looking to you for help and leadership. And you can't run and you can't erupt if you want to communicate leadership in a powerful, powerful way. So my mission for this year is to create and build more peace and more power in my own life and also in the world. And of course, what I'm talking about here is personal power and inner peace, the kind that no one can take away from you, no matter what's going on out there, no matter who you're dealing with. I'm talking about the inner peace and the personal power that you always have with you, and which are the foundation, the bedrock for good leadership. And so we're talking today about finding that sweet spot between having that personal power to address concerns and issues and change and crises while maintaining a calm, steadfast, grounded presence so that you can point people in the direction that they need to go and they can trust you as a leader. And how we're going to do that today is we're going to talk about power versus powerlessness a little bit in terms of our nonverbal communication. You might be familiar with Amy Cuddy and her book Presence. And we're talking here about not power over, like power over people, but the power to act, the power to think, the power to communicate. And when you have that sense of power, it makes you approach. Now you can have the difficult conversation. You can face the crisis. You can tell people what needs to be done or not done. But when you feel powerless, and I think last year robbed many of us of our sense of power. I think many of us felt powerless last year in the face of all the things that were going on in the world and in our own personal lives, of course. And when you feel powerless, it makes you avoid. You feel like you can't deal with, you can't handle, you have no agency for creating change. And so you back away and either you run and you hide, as I said before, or sometimes you hide behind that mask of anger, and neither one is very effective. So the concepts we're going to talk about today, first, we're going to start with what's going on in your head. What is happening in your mind that can either contribute to or detract from your leadership, whether or not you are communicating leadership, presenting yourself as a leader and demonstrating leadership. And then from there, the bulk of our time today is going to be spent on specific nonverbal skills that will help you communicate leadership in terms of words, in terms of voice tone, in terms of how you use your body. And at the end, I'll spend a couple of minutes right before we go to questions on authenticity, because that always comes up when we're talking about nonverbal communication. So let's start here with the voice in your head. What is going on between your ears? Because the first step to communicating leadership is addressing the stories that are going on in your head. How you talk to yourself determines how you talk to others. And if you speak to yourself in ways that tear you down, that affects your presence and it affects how you communicate to others. Now, we all have this voice that lives in our head, and sometimes it's innocuous. Sometimes the voice in your head is just running down your to-do list or trying to remember whether or not you turned off the stove or whatever the case may be. But often that voice in your head is cruel. I mean, it's often a jerk telling you all sorts of horrible things about yourself or about what other people maybe think of you. And that affects your communication because your body language starts there. Your words and the way you use your body start with your own thoughts. So I'd like you to think about, what is your story? What is the story that you tell yourself, especially again in times of stress, when things are not going the way that you expect? What story do you fall back on? Some of the ones that I've heard from my clients, and if one of these resonates or you have another one, feel free to put it in the chat. You can see what other people are saying if you relate to what they are saying about their stories. But, it might be, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing here. That could be the story, the soundtrack that goes on in your head in the background when you're faced with uncertainty. Or it could be, I have to be perfect to have any kind of credibility. It could be people don't take me seriously. Men don't take me seriously. Other women don't take me seriously. I have to prove myself all the time. It could be I don't belong here. These are negative stories. You may have positive stories too, and I hope you do. And that actually is my whole point here, is that what is going on in your head affects how you show up to other people. I had a client once who came in and is a man, but he sat down, he says, my boss hates me. And as we kind of unpacked that and how he was responding to her dealing with him, we realized that it was affecting how he approached her. And so when we just got rid of that story and came up with a story that served him better, because you don't know what's going on in someone else's head unless they tell you. And sometimes they do tell you. Sometimes they tell you they think you're an idiot or whatever the case may be. Although even then that's a reflection of them and not necessarily of you. But we don't know what people are thinking about us. And when your story is negative, then everything that comes from that place is also going to be negative, and you do not have then that power to be the leader that you and the people that you're hoping to lead need you to be and need you to have. So you always have the right to tell that voice in your head to shut up. I mean, it's your head, it's your brain. What happens in there is your choice and your responsibility. And most of us have soundtracks that just sort of play on automatic, but you always have the right, and I'm going to say the responsibility, to notice those stories and make choices based on what you're going to say to yourself. Is what you're saying to yourself contributing to a leadership presence? Or is it making you feel small? Or is it making you feel angry? Or is it helping you? There's a classic book here, leadership book from like the 80s, I think. Benjamin and Rosamund Zander wrote it, and I still love it. It's called The Art of Possibility. But in it, he says, in every story you tell yourself, it's founded on a network of hidden assumptions. So you're assuming things, but we believe our stories. This is a problem. We tell ourselves stories, and then we act as if it's the gospel truth. But if you learn to notice and distinguish these stories, you'll be able to break through the barriers of any box. Because now all of a sudden, everything is open, everything is possible when you change your story. So again, write a story that supports you, a story that encourages you. Write a story that buoys you up, that nourishes you, instead of one that tears you down or that makes you feel small or weak or like I can't do this. By all means, write a story that is grounded in truth and in experience, but they're there. Choose the positive stories. Because like I said before, body language starts in the brain. Every word that comes out of your mouth, every little gesture you do with your hands, tapping your foot, whatever the case may be, that all starts with a thought. And if you can change your thoughts to be supportive of you, then all these other nonverbal tips that I'm about to go into are going to be a lot easier if they'll come from a much more congruent place. If you can start with having a story in your head, an idea that supports these behaviors. So from there, we'll go on to nonverbal skills. And the first one I'm going to talk about is language, which might not actually sound like a nonverbal skill. Verbal is the act of speaking, but the words that you choose send a powerful message. So for example, if someone tells me that their daughter did such and such versus their kid did such and such versus their brat did such and such, that tells me a lot about that person and their relationship with their daughter or child. I'm not going to say brat. So the words that you choose send a much bigger message, and that's why they're included in nonverbal skills. Now, we as women have a tendency to use what I call limiting language. Often we want to soften the blow if we have something difficult to say, or we're trying to tell people what to do. We want to encourage and support and lift others up, and sometimes we do that by putting ourselves down. And so over the next, I've got 3 groups here of phrases and words. I've grouped them together in ways that made sense to me, but they all stand on their own. And things that we tend to slip in to our conversations and our meetings that reduce our credibility and reduce our leadership capacity. So the first set is starting things with, I think, I feel, in my opinion. Now, by all means, if you have a thought or a feeling, state it as a thought or a feeling. You know, if you feel sad or you feel angry, say, this makes me sad. This makes me feel angry. That is actually a feeling. Most of the time when we say, I feel, it's not a feeling at all. We're saying, I really feel like it would be a good idea if, or I feel like we need to do this, or these people are going to get upset with us, or whatever the case may be. It's couching language. It's softening. It's not actually taking responsibility and ownership for what you have to say. So instead, a language of leadership is simply stating the facts as facts. And again, if you have an opinion or a thought, don't pass it off as a fact. Please don't do that. Don't jump in the other ditch. We human beings, we like to jump from ditch to ditch, right? I have a friend who says, I only see the middle of the road as I jump from ditch to ditch. so try not to do that. Don't start stating opinions as facts when they aren't. But if you know a fact, state it as a fact. Don't couch it with, well, I think, or it seems like, or I feel that. State the fact and share your observations. What you have seen is your experience. That's true. State your observations as observations without couching them in these I think, I feel words. So here's some examples. Instead of, well, I think we should, whatever, here's what we need to do. That's what a leader says. A leader says, this is the best course of action. Instead of, I feel like we need to address this problem this way, say, based on the feedback that I've gotten, the best way to solve this would be to do X, Y, and Z. Or in my opinion, say, what I've noticed is. So get out, I think, I feel, and in my opinion, especially when you aren't actually stating a thought, a feeling, or an opinion, get rid of those. They're limiting your ability to communicate leadership. Here's the next set. The word just, and of course I don't mean just in the sense of like justice, and I also don't mean just in the sense of recently, like I just got here. I mean just in the sense of merely. I was just asking, I was just wondering, I just thought maybe, and then maybe and might be are other ones too. We do this again, I see this a lot with women especially. It's so hard for us to just share our experience and let it stand on its own merit. And so we couch it with these little words that soften it, that diminish it, that reduce it, so that we hope it'll be easier to digest. But what that does is it takes away all its weight and all its power. So instead of saying just and maybe and might be, own your experience as it is. Now notice that your experience is different than your opinion. Your experience is what you know to be true because you've lived it, you've seen it, you've done it. Own it without softening it. Here are some examples of that. I was just checking in to see how this is going instead of simply asking, so what's the status on this? Or maybe we should do this, that, or the other thing instead of, it would be best if we approached it this way. Might be a good idea to blah, versus in my experience, here's how this is going to go, or this is what's going to work best here. Now, again, if you're brainstorming, if you're collaborating, if you're spitballing and just throwing ideas on the wall, and everyone's just throwing things out, maybes and mights, and those are words of possibility. So that there's a time and a place for these words. Absolutely use them in that context. But when you are giving information, when you're stating the way things need to be, when you're sharing your experience, it's not a possibility. You're giving the answer. So don't couch it as a possibility. And then the last three, they each stand on their own. They're not really grouped together. But the first one is apologizing all the time. And women do this a lot in my experience. I know some men who do it too. But mostly I see this in women, that they apologize for everything. Now, again, there's a time and a place for every single word on these lists. If you have done something wrong, if you have hurt someone, even unintentionally, even in a very minor way, by all means, apologize. I'm not saying don't apologize. In fact, part of leadership is taking responsibility for your actions and being accountable for them and not passing the buck, not blaming them on other people. So by all means, if you need to apologize, apologize. What I'm talking about here is when you say, I'm sorry for things that were not your fault. I'm sorry for things that you had absolutely no control over. I'm sorry just because it seems like the right thing to say and you don't have anything else to say. That is not, take responsibility for the things that you need to apologize for. Don't take responsibility for things that are not yours. And I remember one time, this is one of those moments, that just kind of sticks in your head forever. I was at the grocery store of all places, and I was just standing there looking at, I don't know, bananas. And someone bumped into me, and I said, oh, I'm sorry. And then I thought, what the heck? Like, what? I can't just stand here in my own space. I have to apologize for being, like, I have to apologize for being in the way. I'm just standing here. So this is one that I relate to. I say it a lot, and I'm working on it. And I hope that you will too, not apologize for everything, especially when it's not your fault. And the second one is coming from a place as a leader. There are lots of things you don't know, and it's fine to say you don't know when you don't know. By all means, again, do that. But as a leader, you need to come from a place of credibility, authority, and certainty. That's one of the things that people look to leaders for. They look to people who can ground them in what is true, what is unchanging, values, vision, goals, those types of things. And so even when you don't know, as a leader, you can always couch it in the things that you do know, and that is the language of leadership. I'll give you some examples here on the next couple of slides. The last one on this page is asking for permission when you're the one in charge. May I please, or, what do you think about this, or what works for you, or could I do this, instead of just stating what you need. So in the opposite of all of those, instead of saying sorry, one of the great tricks that I learned to get sorry out of my language is to say thank you instead. So instead of, man, I'm sorry it's so cold in here. Thank you for hanging out with me in this cold room. Or sorry I was late. Thanks for waiting. Those types of things. You can almost always turn a sorry when it's not your fault into a thank you. Thank you to you for being gracious. And instead of, I don't know what's going on, couching what you don't know in terms of what you do know. So this last year is a great example. There's so much uncertainty in the world. There's so much uncertainty in business. There may be a lot of uncertainty in your career. And it can feel like, well, I have no idea. I have no idea what this year brings. I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know what to tell them what to expect, because I don't know what to expect. That is not the language of leadership. You can acknowledge the fact that, you know what, I don't know what this year has in store for us, but here's what I do know. I know that we're a team of really smart thinkers and hard workers. I know that we've been through some really tough stuff together before. I know that I am going to be here to support you no matter what happens. Those are the things that people look to leaders for in times of crisis, in times of uncertainty. And that is what distinguishes you as a leader from those who are flailing around wringing their hands saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. You don't know either, but you bring people back, including yourself. I mean, a huge part of leadership is leading your own life, leading yourself through the maze that we call life, bringing everyone, including yourself, back to your bedrock values, back to your vision. And I don't mean like your vision for third quarter or whatever the case may be. I mean your vision for why you're doing this to begin with. That's what people look to leadership for. And then the last one, instead of asking for permission all the time, telling people what you need. Instead of, hey, can you help me with this? Say, would you please do this? Those are some ways that you can change your limiting language into being more language of leadership. So for example, instead of sorry for the delay, thank you for your patience. Instead of there's no way to predict how this is going to go, say we can handle it because of these factors. Instead of what works for you, I'm available at these times. So leadership has to do with owning your space in the world, in your organization, and frankly, in your own life, and being grounded in that enough to speak with authority on the things that you know, one of which is you, your life, your vision, your values, your schedule, whatever the case may be. The next set of nonverbal skills that I'm going to go over are body and voice pattern. I put them together because I have two sets here, and a set of body and voice pattern that go together, and then another one on the other side, and they are opposite each other, and they're useful at different times and in different places. So first, we have what's called the authoritative voice pattern, or excuse me, body position, and that's what I'm doing right now. You can do it seated or you can do it standing. If you're in a place where you can stand, by all means, please stand up and do it with me. If you're seated, you can also do it where you are. And the first thing in the authoritative body position is simply being straight and tall. Your weight is evenly distributed over both feet, as you can see here. If you're sitting, it would be distributed over both sits bones. And because your weight is evenly distributed over both feet, your toes point forward. They're not out to the side. In this body position, your head is still, and if you're gesturing, your palms are down. Now, with this goes a voice pattern that matches it. Because of that still head, your voice tends to be flat and it curls down at the ends of statements. What these two things together communicate, what they convey, the first one is credibility. I know what I'm talking about. I have the experience, I have the education, I have whatever it is to be able to speak authoritatively about this. The second thing that it communicates is that right now we are dealing with the issue. This isn't friend time, this isn't fun time. We're taking care of business right now when I'm using that voice pattern that goes down and I'm standing up straight. It also communicates that I'm in one-way communication mode. And so you'll notice that I'm using this voice pattern mostly throughout this presentation, and you will too if you give a presentation or you're in a meeting and you're stating your opinions or your suggestions. It doesn't invite feedback. I'm not saying, well, what do you think about this? You're telling people, and that is communicated by the way that you're standing and the way that you're using your voice. And it also is positional. It comes from your position. It's not a personal, friendly, let me tell you about myself voice pattern or body position. You need this as a leader if you want to speak with credibility and you want others to follow you. And that's what leadership is, right? You are going somewhere. You've got a vision, you've got a destination in mind. And you're hoping to invite other people to follow you to that destination, whether it's a literal destination or a figurative one. And they have to trust you to be able to do that. They have to know that you can get them there. And you communicate that non-verbally, partly by being authoritative. So anytime you are giving information, giving, for example, an agenda, stating ground rules, expectations, both your expectations of people as well as what they can expect for the future. We had some people come and do some work here on our property last week, and I'd never done this process before. And all they said was, we'll be there between 9 and 10 o'clock on such and such a day. I'm like, okay. And they come in, and it ended up that if I had no idea what to expect, we ended up not being able to use half our house for the day. It would have been nice to know that beforehand, right? So anytime you can tell people what to expect ahead of time and deliver that information authoritatively, your credibility as a leader goes way up. If you're teaching, if you're training, if you're delivering content, if you're going over a performance review, giving directions, all of these things, anytime information is coming from you to another person, that's when you need to be authoritative. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have what I call the approachable body position and voice pattern. Now here, it's a much more open, relaxed, and friendly posture as well as voice tone. As you can see, the woman in this picture here, she has all her weight on one foot. What that does is it naturally opens up your body. One foot is, the toes are pointed outward. Usually your head is tilted to the side and it might bob up and down. And if you're gesturing with your palms up. Now, with that bobbing, tilted head, what happens is the voice tends to be a little bit more rhythmic and will curl up at the ends of statements as if you're asking a question. As a leader, you need both of these. Here's what you need to be credible. And often in leadership, that's what I'm working with women on frequently, is to increase their credibility. But you can't just be credible all the time. You also need this approachable voice pattern and body language because it communicates openness, it communicates friendliness, it communicates a willingness to listen. It communicates that I'm not just here for myself, I'm here for all of you, which again, that's what leadership is, right? You've got people you're hoping are following you. It communicates relationship. And it also invites dialogue. It is a two-way communication tool. So anytime you want feedback, anytime you want ideas, you're brainstorming, you're collaborating, any of that, that's when you want to use this voice pattern and body language, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more open. And it's very personable. It comes from your person. Like I said, you use this, obviously if you're asking a question, your voice should curl up at the ends of statements. I had a friend who, she does presentations like this, and she was doing an all-day workshop. I went to help and coach her there. And at the end of the first morning session, she had asked, what are you learning at the end of it? But she did it with authoritative body position and authoritative voice pattern. So she said, what are you learning? And no, like a pin, you could hear a pin drop, no one answered. So at the lunch break, she's like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I know people are learning stuff because on the feedback forums, they tell me, you know, they learned all this stuff and they thought it was great. So how come no one ever answers that question? And I said, you need to be more approachable. You need to actually invite them to answer with your body language and your voice pattern. Now, she's a very authoritative, naturally authoritative person. And so she had to actually work on it and make a point to get her weight off to one side and say, so what are you learning at the end of the day? And hands just shot up. It worked. It worked. She got the feedback she was looking for. If you're telling jokes or stories, you know, to break up your content when you're delivering a presentation, or if you're before, you know, you're in the little Zoom part before you actually are at the meeting and you're chatting with people, that's when you want to be more approachable. If you're brainstorming, collaborating, like I said, you're looking for input from others, you invite that by being approachable. And anytime you're in relationship mode and you want to create connection, you want to build that connection, build relationships, build rapport, that's when you need these approachable body language and voice pattern skills. Now, most of us lean in one direction together. I'd love to hear if you put in the chat, tell me which one you find more comfortable and more natural. I would say in general, a lot of women tend to lead towards the approachable side, but that's not always the case. Of course, we have women all over the spectrum. And the thing is, as I said before, you have to have both if you want to be a leader. You need to be able to inspire trust and confidence in your abilities by being authoritative, and that you also have to prove that you're a real person, and that people, that also goes into building trust with people that you're hoping to lead, right? So if you have only one or the other, you're very limited. If you are always authoritative and you're always speaking with that curled down voice pattern and you're always 100% business, people think you know what you're doing, but that you're also intimidating. You come across as being very intimidating. If you always curl your voice up at the ends of every statement so that every statement sounds like a question when really it's actually a statement, people think you're really nice, but totally clueless. You have no idea what you're talking about. So you need both. And often we flip back and forth between one and the other many times during the course of a conversation, let alone during the course of a day. The key is timing. Timing is everything to when you want to use one versus the other. And here's the rule of thumb. Be authoritative anytime you're sending information out from you or you're focused on the issue. And then be more approachable anytime you're seeking information from others or you're focusing on the relationship. I had a client once who had these totally backwards, and this is not uncommon. She'd come for general communication skills boosting. She wanted to move up in her company. She was already a manager, I think, in a very large global company, and she wanted to move up. And she came in one day, she's all business, and this woman was very authoritative, all business, no nonsense. I hardly saw her smile. She comes in, she sits down, and she says, Rachel, she says, would you believe it? She says, I had a one-on-one with one of my reports, and they said I could be intimidating. Could you believe that they thought I could be intimidating? And I was like, yeah, I can believe that. I can believe that. And we had talked about that and worked on that a little bit. And then I think at her third session, she had a big presentation coming up she wanted to work on. And she gets up to practice the presentation for me, and I could not believe the difference. She's rocking back and forth like this, holding herself like this. And she said, so today we're going to talk about these 6 things here on the agenda. All we did that whole session, all we did was work on flipping those two so that when she was in front of the group presenting information, she was authoritative. And when she was in one-on-one with someone or just chatting at the water cooler, this was obviously back in the days when we did that sort of thing, she was more approachable. And that transformed her leadership, the way she communicated leadership and the way she was perceived in the organization. All of a sudden, people could come to her when they had needs, when they needed someone to talk to. She became a well-known and respected mentor. But at the same time, upper level leadership, the executive committee, saw her as someone that they could also go to for information. She ended up getting 2 promotions in the next year, which she attributed to this one little thing of getting authoritative when you need to be authoritative and approachable when you need to be approachable. So think about that. Think about how you use these, if you do, when you do, and which one you might need to work on. Now, if you have a position of authority in either your business or just dealing with clients, whatever the case may be, the higher your level of responsibility, the more authoritative you are expected to be. You must be authoritative for other people to take you seriously. Now, if you're worried about maybe coming across as being intimidating or snarky or any of those things, I have 3 tips for you. And the first is simply balance, being able to smoothly transition between being authoritative and also being approachable. You got to be careful here, though, about not doing it the same thing. So another thing, and this is one thing that I think is pretty unique to women. I'm sure there are men out there that do this also, but I've heard it mostly among women. And that is they will say something authoritatively. So for example, I need this by Friday. And then they want to soften it non-verbally. And so they throw on a little approachable okay or something like that at the end. So they say, I need this by Friday. Okay. It's so snarky. And that's not why people are doing it. You're not doing that to try and be snarky. You're doing it to soften it so that it doesn't sound so like, hey, I need this by Friday. But it doesn't work. So be authoritative when you need to be authoritative, but make sure you build in times when you can be approachable, when you can show your person and when you can seek input. Just do it at the appropriate time. The second thing is to have some warmth, like personality. Show that you are, when it's appropriate, show that you are a real person. Humor, clothing can do it, smiling, all those sorts of things. If you have moments throughout your day when you let a little bit of who you are shine through, then you don't need to worry nearly so much about being too authoritative. And the last one, the biggest one that's going to help you be authoritative without coming across as being dictatorial or domineering or snarky or any of those other things that we tend to worry about as women, is this final skill, my last nonverbal skill, and that is breathing. This is a huge and very important nonverbal skill, especially in leadership and especially for women. How you breathe gets communicated to others. Now, people don't go around saying like, oh, I don't think she's breathing very well, that I can't trust her, or whatever the case may be. But it comes through in the way we move, and it comes through in our tone of voice. Now, when you are in fight or flight, which often happens in our world, that leads to shallow breathing or sometimes even holding breath. And the problem is fight or flight. I mean, this is a very useful thing that we have in our brains, right? To be able to escape from danger or fight for what's important to us. The problem is fight or flight is designed to get us to move, like to actually run or to actually punch, right? Or fight. And most of the time, In day-to-day business, when you have a crisis coming up, those are not actually going to help you very much. Running is not the answer to a deadline that's approaching. Fighting, punching the wall or punching your coworker is not the answer. That's not going to help your career at all. And yet, that's what our bodies are designed to do in times of stress. The problem with that is that when you go into fight or flight, that shallow breathing, your brain actually bypasses the part of your brain that does the thinking, and it goes directly to your muscles and your instincts so that you can move. And so what happens is that gets communicated to others. If you're not breathing very well, people sense that you are not thinking clearly. You're not as rational, you're not as creative, you're not as logical as you could be, because you literally are bypassing that part of your brain. You know, this is true because it's happened to you before where, like for me, I'll be sitting there and all of a sudden there's a spider on my leg and I jump, and it's actually lint or something like that, that you don't have time when you're in a life or death situation, like, spiders on you, because that's life or death. You don't have time to actually analyze it and rationally consider and be logical. You just react. That gets communicated. That gets communicated by how you're breathing. So people don't trust your thought process if you're not breathing very well. They also sense that you're threatened, which reduces your credibility. You're like, oh, this crisis is freaking her out. So she obviously can't handle it. That comes from not being able to breathe deeply through the crisis. And because of the fact that you're in fight or flight, people sense that you yourself might be dangerous because you might run off on them or you might fight. These are not leadership traits, right? Leaders stand their ground. And though they do need to fight, they don't do it in a flailing kind of freaking out kind of way. They do it in a strategic way. They do it in a powerful way. That's how leaders fight, with their full faculties with them. So when you breathe well, people can sense now that you're rational, that you're thinking, that you can be strategic, that you've got it under control. They sense that you're capable, that you're not fazed by this. Okay, maybe it's hard. Maybe you're scared even. Maybe you don't have the answers, but they sense that you have the ability, even when you don't know what you're doing. People sense that you're safe. And this is really important in leadership, to be able to create a safe presence for others. And again, this goes back to pointing people to those unchanging truths, pointing to the big picture, the vision that you have for them. And that helps create that safety, but also just your physical presence, which, by the way, all of this comes across over video and over phone. So even if you're not meeting with people in person, they can tell you're breathing just over the phone if you're breathing well or not. And one of my favorite things about breathing well is that breathing patterns are contagious. You can shift the atmosphere of a whole room if you are in leadership by breathing well, because we pick up on the breathing patterns of the people who are speaking, especially if they're people that we perceive to have power. Now, one of the biggest things about this too, and we were talking about voice tone before, is that how you're breathing affects the sound and tone of your voice. So going back to this authoritative and approachable voice pattern, if you are not breathing well and you try to say something authoritatively, and I'm going to do it here, I'm going to say, what did I say before? I said, I need this by Friday. I'm going to hold my breath and then I'm going to say it. I need this by Friday. It sounds angry, it sounds forceful, it sounds angsty, demanding. But if I'm breathing well and I say, I need this by Friday, now it just sounds like a statement. It's just information. There isn't all the anger attached to it. And people can hear that better. Same thing applies to the approachable voice pattern. You can have that lilty, approachable voice pattern that curls up at the ends of statements, but if you're not breathing well, so for example, I'm going to say, what do you think we should do? But I'm going to hold my breath first. What do you think we should do? Oh, now I just sound like anxious and freaked out and weak and like I don't know what to do. But if I have good breathing when I say it, what do you think we should do? Now it's just a question. And again, we lose all the negative, fearful attributes of it simply by breathing well. So if you take nothing else from this whole hour, Leadership, the ability to lead in a crisis, comes down to being able to breathe under stress. So you can think better, you can communicate better, you can demonstrate leadership better, you can communicate and present yourself as a leader better, and everyone around you feels safer if you can breathe. This is a huge skill. It is not easy to do because intuitively and instinctively, if a moment of stress or crisis or change or whatever comes up, our instinct is to breathe more shallowly so that we can run or we can fight. You have to train yourself, which you absolutely can do. Train yourself to take nice deep breaths, even when you're under stress, even when you're under pressure, even when you're feeling angry or worried or anxious. And then you can communicate leadership better to everyone else that's around you. This applies also to those of you who are parents, you have kids, and now we're working here at home. Many of us are anyway. How you speak about your work, how you speak on meetings when your kids are in the next room, they pick up on all that and it affects the atmosphere of the whole house. If you can keep breathing well, even when things aren't going well, everyone else thinks better, you think better, they think better, everyone feels better, and you can move forward better simply by breathing. Last little bit here that I want to talk about is authenticity, because here's what happens. I start telling people, that they feel very comfortable with the approachable voice pattern, and I start telling them they need to curl down at the ends of statements when they're trying to deliver a presentation or what the case may be. And always I hear things like, but that's just not me. That just doesn't feel like my style. I'm just not, that doesn't sound right. We're talking here about skills. We're not talking about personality. We're not talking about who you are. We're talking about literal physical skills that everyone has available to them. And in fact, you've done everything, every single thing that I mentioned today in this hour. You have done it before. All I'm asking you to do is be proactive and purposeful about when you do it and how you do it so that you can communicate leadership. You have all these ranges of things available to you, and yet we narrow ourselves down so often to this little box of what I can do and who I am. And we often do it in the name of authenticity. Just because you haven't done it before doesn't mean it's not authentic to you. I mean, the first time you tried to walk, you fell on your butt and you weren't like, oh, I guess it's just not authentic for me to walk. No, you got back up and you tried it again. So do the things that are uncomfortable. Try them, practice. You will fall on your butt sometimes, even trying some of these. And yet you have a great range and great capacity. Like I said, you've done everything that I've talked about here before. Now I just want you to be purposeful about it, be mindful, and use it strategically to communicate, like I said way back at the beginning. These skills will help you present yourself as the leader that you envision yourself to be. So even though it might feel maybe not super congruent or super authentic right now, if you don't feel, if you're one of those hiders especially that hasn't stepped into your leadership yet, think of who you want to be, and that's what makes it authentic to you. I'm going to open it up for the last 10 minutes for questions here in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to mention, and Sam is going to be sending out an email with links to these 2 free offerings also a little bit later, or you can email me directly if you would like. But I have a 22-page PDF guide here, which goes through the 4 components of presence. Some of the things we've talked about today are in there, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there also on how to communicate leadership non-verbally. And then I also have here my 3-week email coaching program, 21 Days to a Better Life, which I've gotten amazing feedback on. It's just a couple paragraphs every day for 3 weeks. Some of it's mindset stuff, some of it's physical, nonverbal communication stuff to help you, again, communicate and show up to life in a way that really aligns with your values and who you want to be and the kind of life you want to have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam for questions.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel. I'm seeing some great feedback in the chat here. It's been a really helpful presentation. And feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A right now. Like I said, we have a few minutes. We'll get to as many as possible. So the first one, I saw this one come up a lot while you were speaking. And so Alyssa has it here in the Q&A. What's the right approach when you're interviewing? Should you appear more approachable or authoritative?
Great question. I had a client come to me once with that exact same question, and we spent the whole session on that. So the rule of thumb still applies that I gave back previously. Whenever you are giving information, be approachable. And whenever you are in relationship mode or receiving information, I said that backwards, be authoritative. When you're in relationship mode, be approachable. So for example, the interviewer asks you a question, you deliver your answer authoritatively. When they're saying, so tell me a little bit about yourself, and you're in more conversational mode, be more approachable. So you need both in an interview. It has to do with which mode you're in at that moment. Now, this client who had come to me, she was young, had just graduated with a nursing degree. She'd had 4 interviews. She's super smart, super enthusiastic, could not wait to start nursing. She had 4 interviews and none of them went well. And so she came to me, and her thing was that she curled up at the ends of statements every single time. She was super enthusiastic. She was super excited. And yet she only did approachable voice pattern. And she had 2 interviews coming up the next week. And we spent almost the entire hour working on answering questions authoritatively. She went to her 2 interviews and got offers from both of them. And that's the only thing that we did differently. So be authoritative if you're not sure in an interview.
Perfect. Great question from Katie here. She wants to know, how do you handle situations where you accidentally interrupt someone or you yourself are accidentally interrupted? And I'd imagine you might handle those situations differently.
Sure, I guess it would depend maybe on the context. And there are a lot of factors that go in there. Is someone kind of making a power play on you and you want to shut them down? Or is it, you said accidentally. So it's fine to, I'm wondering if it maybe has something to do with the saying I'm sorry. But if you see 2 people that are talking and you walk up and you say something and you didn't realize they were in a conversation, you say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That's totally fine. If someone interrupts you, you can say, just a moment and I'll get right to you. So it depends again on what you think is most appropriate to the situation. Do you need to be authoritative or do you need to be approachable? In that situation where you're interrupting, if you need to interrupt, do it. You say, excuse me, just for a second. I need to interrupt you to ask blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm gonna let you go back to what you're talking about there now and then leave. Other times you might need to be more approachable, like, hey, do you have a minute? Or, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It depends on the situation.
That makes a lot of sense. Another great question from 2 different attendees here. Kimberly is asking, she says, some of the fear that causes the I think or I feel language is the fear of being incorrect. How do you avoid that? And then similarly, Niara has pretty much the same question here. She said, sometimes I struggle with how to state my opinion with authority because I realize it's not a fact, but I'm still confident in my opinion and my suggestion. So how do I share that with confidence, but also, again, avoid that trap, like Kim said, of it being viewed as fact, even though it's just an opinion.
Right. There's a few things there. And again, this seems something that is more pervasive among women than among men. Men are known for stating their thoughts and opinions as facts, mansplaining, all of that. And we don't want to jump into that ditch. 2 things. 1, don't be afraid of being wrong. We're all wrong. If you can handle being wrong graciously, then you feel like you have more power to state something and handle the fallout if you are wrong. If you say, this is what we need to do, and then you receive more data later, you can say, oh, thanks for that data. That changes my stance on this. Now I think we should do this. Totally fine. As for stating your opinion, if you want to make sure that everyone knows that it is an opinion, and yet you're also very confident in it, you can say that this is my opinion, but also do it with that authoritative voice pattern. So instead of, well, in my opinion, I think it would be a good idea if we did this, that is very different than, this is my opinion, I'm going to give it to you for what it's worth. Here it is. Totally different. Does that answer the question? Looks like Sam is frozen. I'll see if.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of stating it. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. My internet connection is bad. But yeah, I think that's a great way of saying it. Like I said, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. A great question here, again, came through from a number of people. I tried to flag all of them. Natalie was the first one who asked it. She said, how do you manage phrases like "it would be best," where you want to show your leadership with coworkers who don't like you speaking up and showing that leadership? And then similarly, an anonymous attendee said something of, in an attempt to be authoritative, I've gotten feedback that I'm being hard on people. So how do you deal that, you know, when you're in maybe more of a hostile environment?
That is tricky. Again, I'm going to go back to how much you let that play into your identity. And if it's okay with you that people disagree with you or don't like you, then you have a lot more power to go ahead and state your opinion authoritatively. Now, that can sometimes create difficult dynamics in an office environment. And if that's what you're trying to avoid, then you need to build the relationships in other ways. You need to build rapport in other ways. You need to show the human side in other ways. You need to listen. So again, it comes back to balance, being willing and able to state your opinion authoritatively while also being willing to listen to others, or to say when you're wrong, or to show a little bit of your personality, and that type of thing.
And a good question here about body language specifically. How does smiling fit in with an authoritative and approachable modes? Is there one where you should be using more of it, one where you should be using less? Is it all about balance? What are your thoughts there?
Again, all about balance. And I took it out of the blog that I'm going to be posting on my website tomorrow, but I had a section on smiling. And again, we want to avoid the extremes where you always smile all the time and smiling and nodding all the time versus never smiling. So definitely approachable is when the smile makes more sense, when you're nodding and tilting and voice is going up. Absolutely add a smile there. And when you're being authoritative, it's fine to smile depending on the content. I mean, obviously you don't want to smile if you're saying, you know, we had a really terrible quarter last quarter. So be willing to not smile and yet find times to smile. And I would definitely say authoritative is less smiley, approachable is more smiley.
Perfect. And then I'm going to finish it out with one more question. Let's leave everybody with some actionable advice here. You know you have those bad habits. You say the word "just" all the time when you present, but you have that upspeak. You know you have those habits, but in the moment you can't catch yourself. How do we break those habits? Do you have any resources, any tips, any good tricks for breaking them?
Yeah, so first of all, just understand the process of changing and breaking those habits. The first step is simply being aware that you're doing it. So don't expect, now that I've told you all this, that tomorrow, starting tomorrow or this afternoon, you're never going to use that word again. The first thing that's going to happen is it's going to pop into your awareness. And I would say just make that the goal for the first week or even month, that every time you say "just," you go, "Oh, I said it." Every time you say, you know, you use your upspeak, like, "Oh, there it is," without the judgment. Because if you have the judgment, you're like, "Oh, I did it again. Oh, what's wrong with me?" That makes it a lot harder to learn and to change. So the first step is just to be aware that you're doing it. And then the next step is to replace it with something else instead of just trying to stop it. So for example, if you say "just" all the time, "I just this, I just that," what would be a good thing to replace it with? I guess it would be just to say, "I need," or "I want," or "here's what I was thinking." You can also do a little physical thing, so that when you find yourself saying it, flick it away, and then that will help you get it into your brain again the next time. Same thing with the upspeak. If you find yourself doing that a lot, then instead of just not trying to do it, remind yourself to be more credible, more authoritative. And as you do that proactively, the upspeak will go away.
I'm not advocating for this method, but I know it's worked for some people. They put a rubber band around their wrist, and every time they hear themselves say it, they snap it. it's just that physical reminder. Again, I don't advocate for that method, but if it works for you, I've heard it work for other people.
I've also heard people putting things in a jar.
Yep, that's a good one too. Yeah, people put coins in their swear jars.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people, but you could have it as your habit breaking jar as well.
Yep.
I want to say thank you again to everybody who attended today's webinar. Really appreciate you spending your time with us today. Thank you once again to Rachel for a wonderful presentation. Rachel, do you have any closing thoughts before I end things here?
I have a quote that I would love to end with you all here today, from Ellen Hendrickson, who wrote the book How to Be Yourself. And this is what I hope you'll take from this, is to put action before confidence. Leadership, a huge part of leadership is communicating with confidence. And many times we feel like if we don't feel it, we can't do it. So do the thing before you feel it. And as she says here, put action before confidence. Do the thing that scares you a little. And I honestly believe that when you change your communication, you can change your life.
Awesome. Thank you once again, Rachel. Thank you everybody for joining us here today. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you at the next one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.